Jeep has hit a major crisis. With their regular lineup getting shelved by buyers, to other, more mainstream models being axed by the company or being made completely obsolete by the competition, the future of this once great company seems grimmer than ever. And the fact that its parent company, Stellantis, is not keen on its subsidiaries failing, it seems like what awaits the iconic American manufacturer is even more agony. So let's not waste any more time on sentimentality and tackle the issue head-on and explain what on earth is going on at Jeep. Terrible quality control. Well, the first and biggest issue is the problem of quality control with Jeep. Truth be told, we think that there isn't an American manufacturer that gives less thought than Jeep when it comes down to the quality of their vehicles. Everything about the quality of recent Jeeps has been thoroughly diminished. First, there are inconsistent panel gaps everywhere. Interior panels, exterior panels, loose trim, you name your preferred imperfection, and Jeep has probably got you covered. But we know what you're thinking. Who cares? As long as it's reliable. Well, that's the neat part. It isn't. No modern Jeep is. I think enough would be said by mentioning that, out of all the engines used in all the Jeeps currently on offer, the only one you could find reliable is a 3.6-liter Pentastar V6 and the Hemi V8. But you know, that's getting axed next year. And the kicker is that both power plants are average at best compared to the competition in terms of quality. Unlike them, the recently introduced Hurricane 4 has proven itself to be full of all kinds of gremlins, and between the two of us, we aren't surprised, as they tried to squeeze out almost 300 horsepower from a measly 2.0-liter four-banger. Come on, Jeep, you aren't Toyota. You know you cannot achieve that kind of power reliably. And that's just scraping the surface. The various small displacement engines used in other more modern Jeeps, such as the 1.2 turbo used in the Avenger, are Peugeot's PureTech engines, all of which have catastrophic quality issues, such as timing chain problems, oil leakage, and drastic oil consumption. All in all, very poor performance. Which brings us to the next point. Powertrain choices are dubious at best. From the old and mediocre 3.6-liter V6 to the peaky and overtrained 2.0-liter Hurricane, all the way to the newly introduced Hurricane 6, Jeep's engine choice has become incredibly stale. Everything, and we do mean everything, seems to be designed and thought out with sheer corporate profit in mind. And nothing fitted to new Jeeps has any kind of soul, like the soon-to-be dearly departed V8 has. The V6 is just a dog. With its low power output, high fuel consumption, and a generally gutless performance, it has mostly been outclassed by all kinds of other, more modern six-cylinder engines used by Stellantis' rivals. The worst offender, in our opinion, are the two Hurricane engines. First of all, we absolutely hate the 2.0-liter four-cylinder because it is extremely overworked, and somehow it keeps under-delivering. Furthermore, it's fitted to the Jeep 4xe models, which, albeit constantly pushed by all kinds of media for being hybrids, are, in our opinion, the worst powertrains one can get in a Jeep. These are robust and dependable vehicles, not some high-tech monstrosities, and we hate that a plug-in hybrid is getting pushed down our throats instead of something simpler. But the worst offender, in our opinion, is the 3.0. It started popping out of nowhere constantly, and every new semi-serious Stellantis vehicle seems to rely on it. And it has even bigger problems than the 2.0, as Stellantis is pushing it to be the new flagship engine and replace the V8 in every way possible, which it simply cannot do, as it is half its size, for God's sake. Sales are dwindling rapidly. There is no avoiding it. Jeep isn't cool anymore. Why? Well, it's because Stellantis fundamentally misunderstands its audience. You see, Stellantis keeps alienating the working man, which is like half of Jeep's buyers. People that need an off-roader, people who need a truck that can tow, people who value capability over everything else. Instead, they're targeting the eco-friendly mob, which, no matter what, aren't buying a Jeep because no matter what kind of electric drivetrain you stuff it with, their boxy shapes will never be good enough to be ecological, just practical. In addition to that, Jeep has practically transformed the Grand Cherokee from a decently capable midsize SUV to a crossover that has no off-road prowess. Why? We don't know, as we're certain that people who are buying Toyotas, Lexuses, BMWs, and Mercs aren't going to trade their brand loyalty for a Jeep. Jeep also had the audacity to axe the Cherokee, which is practically as iconic as the Jeep Wrangler. And before they did that, they degraded it to a glorified hatchback with a larger ground clearance. This all resulted in less and less people buying Jeeps across the range, as nobody is interested in buying an overpriced, underpowered, and mediocre red badge Fiat or Peugeot. While, on the other hand, nobody that needs a workhorse is going to cough out luxury cars' level of pricing. As a result, the once well-adored Jeep Gladiator sales have been reduced so much for 2024 that it most likely isn't going to see a new generation. It sold only 32,000 units, which is almost one-third of what it sold in 2021. And the worst part of it is that it was redesigned last year, which is why one would expect that it would sell better. But no. To add insult to injury, the Gladiator uses a 3.6-liter V6 and a 2.0-based PHEV drivetrain and doesn't and never has used either the V8 or the Hurricane 6 engine, both of which have more than sufficient torque, are extremely potent, and would be a blessing for a truck like this. The problem is so severe that even the Jeep Gladiator has been met with a massive disdain from the Jeep community, and its sales have been hit drastically for the past 5 years, with every next one being worse than the other. It's so bad that the Ford Bronco, which is drastically more expensive than the Wrangler and has a less iconic nameplate, has all but equaled the sales figures of it. All of this makes us wonder, what is the root of all these issues? Well, that's a simple answer, and it stems down to the fact that Frenchies running American brands isn't working. The truth is that Jeep is not the only one that is experiencing these issues. All U.S. manufacturers under Stellantis are. The truth is that the French running American brands simply makes less than no sense. You see, the French have always had a fundamentally different idea about what a car should look like and do. To them, a car needs to be as frugal as possible, as disposable as possible, and as cheap as possible, to the point that the quality simply isn't needed. Heck, even we know that. Out of all the manufacturers across the pond, Peugeot and Fiat come across as the absolute worst of the worst. And you can only imagine how bad it gets when the lack of detail and soul of the French gets combined with the utter lack of quality of the Italians. As a result, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, and many other brands have started suffering extremely under the leadership of Carlos Tavares, to the point that Chrysler, a once respected and renowned brand, has been degraded to making the Chrysler Pacifica exclusively, which is to be axed soon. On the other hand, Dodge and Ram, famed for their wide range of maniacally powered and the utter reliance on V8 engines, has had its entire V8 lineup scrapped in 2024, with the only V8 vehicle being the heavy-duty Ram truck, and even it is on its shaky legs, as we're yet to see if it'll keep the engine after the 2025 redesign. Jeep, of course, hasn't been spared of this idiotic way of thinking, and the Jeep Wrangler bid farewell to the V8 engine with the 2025 model year, which is set to be the last Jeep with a V8 engine. In addition to this, Stellantis has also tried to make the Jeep brand as posh as possible, instead of making it as capable as possible. And vehicles, all but the Wrangler and the Gladiator, are practically pavement princesses and are thoroughly incapable off-road. The biggest affront to Jeep's lineage is the newly released Jeep Avenger, which is just a generic Stellantis subcompact crossover that has a half Jeep, half Yugo styling. Just look at the front and the back of it. It looks like a modern Yugo concept. Overall, we'd urge Stellantis to stop what they're doing and think through their next decisions about the future of Jeep, and the rest of American manufacturers under their wing. But really, who are we kidding? We know that Tavares isn't going to listen to us, and as such, we are about to see half of the manufacturers we grew up with get derailed by this European way of doing business.